I'm 68. I discovered my son's plan to steal my house. Here's how I fought back. I'm 68 years old. Last year, my son tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could steal my house. He's a lawyer. I'm also a lawyer. This is the story of how I destroyed his plan in 6 months. But let me be clear about something from the start. I didn't want to do this. Didn't want to turn my son's life into a cautionary tale. Didn't want to spend my retirement years in courtrooms and legal battles. I wanted to be a grandfather. Wanted Sunday dinners and birthday parties and watching my grandkids grow up. But my son had other plans for me. And when I discovered what those plans were, when I found the documents, the research, the text messages, I had to make a choice. Be a victim. Or be a lawyer. I chose lawyer. If you'd told me 3 years ago that on November 23, 2023, at exactly 7:42 p.m., I would stand in the Waterford's lobby and publicly humiliate my only son in front of a dozen witnesses, I would have said you were insane. If you'd told me I would cut him out of a $3.8 million inheritance, sell the house I'd lived in for 34 years to strangers, and move into senior living to escape him, I would have laughed. But that's exactly what happened. And it all started 6 months earlier with a phone call that seemed innocent at the time. May 14, 2023. Sunday afternoon. 2:17 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd just finished watching the golf tournament. Tiger Woods was making one of his impossible comebacks, and I was settling into my recliner, Jennifer's chair, actually, the one I'd moved to after she died because it still smelled faintly of her perfume, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Michael's son. I smiled before I answered. Still smiled back then. I picked up. Hey, son. His voice came through the speaker, tired in a way that made my parental instincts kick in immediately. Hey, Dad. A pause. Background noise, a baby crying, someone's muffled voice. You got a minute? Now, let me tell you about Michael, because it matters for understanding what came next. Michael is my only child. 37 years old. Corporate attorney at Morrison, Klein Associates, one of those big California firms with glass offices and catered lunches, and associates who bill 2,200 hours a year. He made $215,000 annually. Or at least that's what he told me last time we discussed his career. He was married to Vanessa, 34, former marketing manager who'd left her job after their second child was born. They had 2 kids, Emma, 5 years old, and baby James, just 6 months old at the time. From the outside looking in, they appeared to be living the dream. Big house in a good neighborhood. Emma in private preschool. 2 new cars. Annual vacations. The whole upper middle class package. But I'd been seeing cracks in that perfect facade for 5 years. And the cracks were getting wider. I sat up in my chair, muting the television. Of course I've got time. What's going on? Long pause on the other end. I could hear baby James crying louder now, and what sounded like Vanessa's voice saying something sharp, though I couldn't make out the words. Then Michael spoke again, and his voice had that particular strain I'd learned to recognize. Dad, we're having some financial difficulties. My stomach sank. This wasn't the first time I'd heard those words. Let me give you the history, because it's important. 2019, Michael called me in March. He and Vanessa were getting married, he said. They'd found the perfect venue, some garden location in Malibu with catering by a celebrity chef I'd never heard of. Total cost? $35,000. He didn't ask if I could contribute. He informed me, casually, like it was a given, that traditionally, parents pay for weddings. Never mind that I hadn't been consulted on the budget. Never mind that Jennifer, my late wife, would have had a heart attack at spending that kind of money on a single day. But he was my son. My only child. I wrote the check. 2020, another call. Emergency kitchen renovation, Michael called it. The cabinets were outdated, apparently. The countertops were laminate when they should be granite. They needed custom backsplash, professional-grade appliances, the works. $28,000. I wrote that check too. 2021, 2 calls that year. First, Emma needed to attend a specific private preschool. Not just any preschool, one that cost more per year than some people's college tuition. They couldn't possibly send their daughter to public school. What would the neighbors think? $32,000 for 3 years. Second call came in October. Vanessa needed a mommy makeover. Plastic surgery to fix what pregnancy had done to her body. Plus an entire new wardrobe because none of her old clothes fit anymore. This was an investment in her appearance, Michael explained. Something that would help her confidence, help their marriage, help their family. Another $20,000. 2022, the worst one. Vanessa's friend was selling some kind of miracle skincare line. Multi-level marketing, though they never called it that. This was a business opportunity. Vanessa was going to be an independent distributor, build a team, make 6 figures from home while taking care of the kids. All she needed was $43,000 for startup inventory, training seminars, and promotional materials. I knew it was a scam. 40 years as an estate attorney means you've seen every con and pyramid scheme that exists. But Michael insisted. Vanessa believed in it wholeheartedly. This was going to change their lives. 6 months later, their garage was full of unsold face cream and pink boxes, and the business opportunity had evaporated like morning fog. Total across 4 years, $158,000. All of it borrowed. None of it ever repaid. Every single time I gently, and I was gentle about it, I promise you, brought up repayment, there were tears. Usually from Vanessa, sometimes from Michael. There were complicated financial explanations about cash flow and timing. There were promises that they were working on it, that they'd start paying me back as soon as Michael's next bonus came through, that they just needed a little more time. But I'm an estate attorney. Was an estate attorney before I retired. I'd spent 40 years watching people make terrible financial decisions. I knew what I was seeing. The problem was, he was my son. And you don't give up on your son. That's what I told myself. Family helps family. That's what fathers do. So when Michael called me that Sunday afternoon in May, when I heard that familiar strain in his voice, I felt that sinking feeling in my stomach that told me exactly what was coming. I just didn't know how bad it would get. I took a breath before responding. How much this time, Michael? My voice came out more tired than I'd intended. More resigned. There was a pause. When Michael spoke again, his tone had shifted. More serious. More worried. It's not. Dad, it's not about borrowing money this time. That caught my attention. I sat forward in the chair. Okay. So what is it about? Another pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel him gathering courage to say whatever he needed to say. Dad, Vanessa and I have been talking. His words came faster now, like he'd rehearsed them. With James just born 6 months ago, and Emma starting kindergarten in the fall, and my firm doing another round of layoffs, we need to make some major changes. What kind of changes? I kept my voice neutral. Careful. 40 years of depositions had taught me how to stay neutral. I heard him swallow. We can't afford our house anymore. The mortgage is $6,800 a month. Then there's property taxes, insurance, Vanessa's car payment, my student loans, childcare costs, Emma's private school tuition. Dad, we're drowning. I did the math quickly in my head. On his $215,000 gross income, after federal and state taxes and all the deductions, he was probably taking home somewhere around $11,000 monthly. $6,800 just for housing left a razor-thin margin for everything else. Have you considered downsizing? I asked carefully. Maybe selling your place and buying something smaller? Something more manageable? His laugh was bitter. Short and sharp. We're underwater, Dad. We bought at the absolute peak in 2020 for $925,000. The market's dropped since then. If we're lucky, really lucky, we might get $850,000 now. After selling costs and paying off the mortgage, we'd walk away with maybe $30,000. That's not enough for a down payment on anything in a decent school district. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me through the phone. So what are you thinking? This was it. I could feel it coming like you feel a storm approaching. Dad, here's what Vanessa and I were thinking. The words came out fast now, tumbling over each other. What if we moved in with you? The words hung in the air between us. My heart rate picked up. Into my house. Just temporarily. He was speaking faster now, eager. Just until we get back on our feet financially. You have 4 bedrooms, plenty of space for all of us. Emma and James could each have their own room. We'd help with expenses, obviously. We'd contribute to groceries, utilities, maintenance. And Vanessa could help take care of the house. She's great at cooking, cleaning, organizing. Dad, it would actually be helpful for you too. You're living in that big house all alone. You're 68 years old. It could use a woman's touch again. Jennifer would have wanted. Don't. The word came out sharper than I intended. Don't tell me what Jennifer would have wanted. Silence. Every single instinct I'd honed over 40 years of legal practice started screaming at me. Red flags. Everywhere. Flashing like emergency lights. But this was my son. My only child. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike on this very street. The teenager I'd stayed up with the night before his SATs, drilling him on vocabulary until 2 a.m. The young man I'd hugged at his law school graduation, both of us crying because Jennifer wasn't there to see it. Michael, I don't think that's a good. He cut me off. Please, Dad. We're desperate here. Vanessa's parents can't help, they're barely scraping by themselves on Social Security. My firm is doing another round of layoffs next month, and I don't know if I'll survive the cut. If I lose my job. His voice actually broke. Cracked with raw emotion. Dad, I can't provide for my family. In the background, I heard Emma's voice. Small, innocent, heartbreaking. Daddy, why are you crying? And just like that, Michael had me. Not intentionally, maybe. Or maybe very intentionally. After 37 years, I still sometimes couldn't tell when my son was deliberately manipulating me and when he was just Michael. Just my desperate, overwhelmed son who'd gotten in over his head. I heard James crying louder. The baby needing to be fed or changed, adding to the chaos I could feel through the phone. I rubbed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. Let me think about it, Michael. This is a big decision. Dad, we need to know soon. His voice had an edge now. Urgency mixed with something that might have been panic. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank started foreclosure proceedings. We got the first notice last week. 3 months behind. That meant they'd been in serious trouble since at least February. Maybe earlier. 3 months? Michael, why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I was embarrassed. The words burst out of him, raw and angry. I'm a lawyer, for God's sake. A corporate attorney at a major firm. I should be able to handle my own finances. I should be able to provide for my family without running to daddy for help like I'm still 12 years old. The pain in his voice was real. That much I knew. I closed my eyes. Let me think about it. I'll call you back in a couple days. Okay. He sounded deflated now. Defeated. Okay. Thanks, Dad. I know it's a lot to ask. We don't have anywhere else to turn. After we hung up, I sat in Jennifer's recliner and stared at the ceiling. The house. My house. The house Jennifer and I had bought back in 1989 for $340,000. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, 2,800 square feet, quarter-acre lot with mature oak trees that were probably 80 years old. In Pasadena, California. By 2023, the house was worth approximately $1.8 million. I loved that house. Every creaky floorboard. Every sun-faded spot on the hardwood where Jennifer's reading chair had sat for 30 years. Every pencil mark on the kitchen doorframe tracking Michael's height from age 4 to 18. But I'm also a pragmatist. The house was too big for one person. The maintenance was becoming a burden, the roof needed replacing, the HVAC system was making strange noises, the garden was more than I could handle alone. I'd been thinking about downsizing anyway. Maybe moving into one of those nice senior living communities with social activities, meals included, maintenance handled, emergency medical response available. I just hadn't gotten around to it yet. Moving Michael's family in. Temporarily. It was reasonable, wasn't it? Family helps family. I had the space. They had the need. Michael was my son. Emma and James were my grandchildren. How could I say no? But something felt wrong. Something felt very, very wrong. At 4:32 p.m. that same afternoon, I called Susan Chen. Susan and I had practiced estate law together for 25 years before we both retired. She'd been the managing partner at our firm, brilliant, sharp-eyed, the kind of lawyer who could spot a scam from 3 miles away while blindfolded. More importantly, she'd seen every possible variation of family financial horror story. Every scheming child. Every manipulative caregiver. Every well-meaning parent who ended up broke, bewildered, and legally powerless in their own home. She answered on the second ring. Richard. How's retirement treating you? I could picture her in her home office. The mahogany desk that had been her father's. The brass lamp she'd inherited from him. Walls lined with law books she'd never gotten rid of despite her wife's complaints about the dust. Susan was probably drinking jasmine tea. She always was. Susan, I need a reality check. My tone must have conveyed the seriousness, because her voice immediately shifted to what I'd always called her courtroom mode, measured, focused, all warmth stripped away to reveal the sharp legal mind underneath. Talk to me. I explained the situation. Michael's financial troubles. The foreclosure. The $158,000 in unpaid loans. The request to move into my house temporarily. All of it. When I finished, there was a long silence. I heard her set down her teacup, that familiar delicate clink of porcelain on wood that meant she was thinking hard. Then she spoke, and her voice had gone very quiet. Very serious. Richard. How much is your house worth? About $1.8 million. And your total estate? Around $3.8 million. The house, retirement accounts, investment portfolio, life insurance policy. And Michael is your only heir? Yes. Another pause. I heard papers rustling. Susan was pulling out a legal pad. She always thought better with a pen in her hand. Richard. Her voice was deliberate now. Each word carefully placed. Listen to me very carefully. Do not let them Move. In. But Susan. No. She cut me off with the force of a judge's gavel. Richard, I've seen this exact scenario play out dozens of times in my career. Dozens. And it never, I mean never, not once, ends well for the parent. A chill ran down my spine. Explain. I heard her take a sip of tea, organizing her thoughts the way she used to before addressing a jury. They move in temporarily. You're helping your son in a crisis, being a good father. Very reasonable. Very noble. Everyone understands. She paused. But here's what happens next. Temporary becomes permanent. They can't find an affordable place that meets Vanessa's standards. Or there's always just one more month until Michael gets that promotion. Or Vanessa starts another business opportunity that just needs a little more time. There's always a reason to stay just a bit longer. I was nodding, even though she couldn't see me. Then, Susan continued, her voice dropping lower, they establish legal residency. Your house becomes their official address. They register to vote there. Put it on Emma's school records. Get their mail delivered there. And once they've established residency, one of three things happens. She paused. I waited, heart pounding. Option 1, they start claiming they've been paying rent or contributing to the mortgage, even if they haven't, or haven't been paying anywhere near fair market value, and they argue they have some kind of ownership interest in the property. Gets messy fast. Usually ends up in court. My stomach churned. Option 2, they stop paying anything at all. No rent, no utilities, nothing. And you can't evict them because they're family. You can't drag your own grandchildren out onto the street. So you're stuck subsidizing their entire existence while they live rent-free in your $1 million house. Jesus, I muttered. Option 3. Susan's voice dropped even lower. And Richard, this is the worst one. The one that keeps me up at night thinking about former clients. They start building a case that you're declining mentally and that you need them as caregivers. They start controlling your medications, making your doctor's appointments, handling your finances. They isolate you from friends. And then they pursue guardianship. The room felt very cold suddenly. Michael wouldn't. Michael is desperate. Susan's words were sharp, cutting through my protest like a scalpel. Desperate people do desperate things, Richard. They rationalize. They tell themselves they're actually helping you. They convince themselves that you're getting old anyway, that you need someone to take care of you, that they're doing you a favor by taking control. She wasn't finished. And that wife of his? Vanessa? The one who's convinced him to borrow $158,000 from you for cosmetic surgery, failed pyramid schemes, and a kitchen renovation they couldn't afford? She's already shown you exactly who she is. Believe her. I sat with that for a long, heavy moment. Outside my window, I could see Mrs. Patterson across the street watering her roses. Normal Sunday afternoon. Normal neighborhood. Everything looked so ordinary. So safe. What should I do? I asked finally. Say no. Clearly, firmly, immediately. Susan's voice softened just a fraction. If you want to help, and I know you do because you're a good father, offer to help them find a financial counselor. Maybe offer to pay for a bankruptcy attorney, because that's probably what they actually need. But Richard, under no circumstances should you give them access to your primary asset. After we hung up, I sat in that recliner until the sun went down. Didn't turn on any lights. Just sat there in the growing darkness, thinking about my son. About the little boy who used to pick dandelions from the backyard and bring them to me like they were roses. About the teenager who'd cried in my arms when his girlfriend dumped him before prom. About the young man who'd called me at midnight from law school, overwhelmed and terrified he wasn't smart enough to make it. About the man who was now 3 months behind on his mortgage and asking to move into my house. About what Susan had said. About what it all meant. I called Michael back the next day. Monday, May 15th, 9:14 in the morning. He answered on the first ring, hope clear in his voice. Dad? I closed my eyes. I've thought about your proposal. And? He was trying to sound casual. Failing miserably. I can't let you move in, Michael. The silence on the other end was cold. Heavy. The kind of silence that has physical weight. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. Are you serious right now? I'm sorry, son. But I think it would create more problems than it would solve. Create problems? His voice was rising now, anger bleeding through. Dad, we're about to be homeless. We're about to lose everything. Our kids are going to be living in a car. And you're worried about it creating problems? I kept my voice steady. Calm. 40 years of depositions had taught me how to stay calm when everyone else was losing control. You're not going to be homeless. You have options. Bankruptcy would stop the foreclosure immediately and let you restructure your debts. Or you could sell the house, take the $30,000, and rent an apartment in a more affordable area. These aren't pleasant options, but they exist. I can't believe this. His voice was shaking now, vibrating with rage or grief or both. I can't believe what I'm hearing. My own father. I have 2 small children. Your grandchildren. And you're going to let us end up on the street? That's not what No, you know what? Forget it. Just forget I asked. He was breathing hard now. I could hear it through the phone. We'll figure it out ourselves. Clearly, we can't count on family. Michael. The line went dead. He'd hung up on me. I stood there in my kitchen, holding my phone, staring at the screen that showed call ended. My hand was shaking. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing. No calls. No texts. No Sunday FaceTime calls with Emma where she showed me her latest drawings and told me about getting ready for kindergarten. The silence felt like punishment. Like Michael had cut me off as retaliation for saying no. On June 3rd, I broke down and texted him. How are Emma and James? No response. June 5th, thinking about you all. Hope you're okay. Nothing. The silence stretched. Days became a week. A week became 2. I told myself I'd done the right thing. Susan was right. Setting boundaries was necessary. But it didn't feel right. It felt awful. Then, on June 8, 2023, at exactly 11:47 p.m., I remember because I'd already gone to bed and the phone screen lit up my dark bedroom like a spotlight, my phone buzzed with a text. From Michael. I grabbed the phone, heart suddenly pounding. The message read, Dad, I'm sorry for how I reacted. You were right to set boundaries. Can we talk? Relief flooded through me like warm water. This was my son. The boy I'd raised. The good kid underneath all the poor choices and financial pressure and Vanessa's influence. He'd come to his senses. I typed back immediately, of course. Call me tomorrow. His response came within 30 seconds. Actually, Vanessa and I want to come by. Talk in person. Are you free Saturday afternoon? Something in my gut twisted. Just slightly. Why did Vanessa need to come? But I pushed the feeling aside. Maybe that was unfair. Maybe she wanted to apologize too. Maybe they'd had a long talk and realized they'd been unreasonable. I typed, sure. 2 p.m.? Perfect. See you then. I set the phone down. Lay back in bed. stared at the ceiling in the darkness. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe I'd judged them too harshly. Maybe Susan's warnings had made me paranoid. Maybe this would all work out after all. That's what I told myself as I fell back asleep. But deep down, in that place where instinct lives, I knew better. This wasn't reconciliation coming on Saturday. This was something else. Something I couldn't quite name yet. Something that would change everything. Saturday, June 10th, 2023. 2 p.m. Michael and Vanessa showed up together. No kids, they'd left them with Vanessa's mother, Michael explained as I opened the door. We sat in my living room. The afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors Jennifer had insisted on refinishing back in 2010. Vanessa had brought homemade cookies. Chocolate chip, still warm, arranged on a plate she must have brought from home. The domesticity of it felt calculated somehow, though maybe I was being paranoid. Michael had a leather folder tucked under his arm. Professional looking. Expensive. Dad, we've been doing a lot of thinking. Michael started before he'd even fully sat down. His words came out rehearsed, like he'd practiced this speech. You were right. Moving in with you wasn't the answer. We need to solve our own problems. I'm glad to hear that. So we've been working with a financial advisor. He gestured to Vanessa, who nodded enthusiastically. Creating a budget. Cutting expenses. Identifying where we've been overspending. Getting serious about our finances for the first time in years, honestly. Vanessa jumped in, her voice bright. I've already been looking at remote marketing positions. Something flexible so I can still be with the kids, but bring in income. There are a lot of opportunities out there for someone with my experience. That's great, I said, and I meant it. This sounded like actual progress. I'm proud of you both for taking responsibility. Michael smiled. Relieved. We appreciate that, Dad. And we wanted to thank you for the wake-up call. You were right to say no. We needed to hear it. But there's one thing we need to address, he continued, opening his leather folder. The loans you've given us over the years. The $158,000. My stomach tightened slightly. Our financial advisor says we need to clarify the terms. Are they gifts? Are they loans with formal repayment terms? Right now it's creating ambiguity in our financial planning. We can't create an accurate budget if we don't know whether we owe you money or not. That was actually reasonable. I'd never formalized any of it. Just transferred money when asked. Kept mental notes but never written documentation. I suppose we could draft a formal loan agreement, I said slowly, thinking it through. With a reasonable repayment schedule. Maybe interest-free, or very low interest. Something manageable for you but clear for everyone. Michael and Vanessa exchanged a glance. Quick. Practiced. That's when I should have known. Actually, Dad, we were hoping you might consider converting them to gifts instead. Michael's voice was careful now. Measured. For tax purposes. It would simplify things significantly for everyone. The annual gift tax exclusion in 2023 was $17,000 per person. I could gift $17,000 to Michael and $17,000 to Vanessa each year without tax implications. Over the years, I'd never formalized anything properly, so technically those transfers existed in a legal gray area. If we structure it correctly, Michael said, sliding documents across the coffee table toward me, we can claim the previous transfers as gifts applied retroactively to prior year's exclusions. Backdated properly. We've had an attorney draft the paperwork to make it all official and above board. I picked up the documents. The paper was heavy stock. Expensive. Official looking with a law firm's letterhead at the top, not Michael's firm, I noticed. Someone else. I started reading. The first document was straightforward enough, a gift acknowledgement letter, backdating the various loans as gifts spread across multiple tax years. 2019 through 2022. Mathematical calculations showing how it all fit within the exclusion limits. Professional. Clean. Legal. Then I turned to the second page. It wasn't just a gift acknowledgement. It included additional language stating that I acknowledged these transfers were early inheritance advances and that Michael's eventual inheritance would be reduced accordingly upon my death by the total value of the gifts. That was actually standard practice. Not unreasonable. But there was a third document underneath. I pulled it out. Read the header. Felt my blood go cold. Durable power of attorney for financial affairs. Granting Michael Foster full legal authority to manage Richard Foster's financial accounts, assets, and transactions in the event of incapacity or inability to manage affairs. The paper suddenly felt very heavy in my hands. What is this? My voice came out calm. Steady. My lawyer voice. Vanessa spoke up, her tone bright and reasonable. Oh, that's just a standard precaution, Richard. You're getting older, not that you're old, of course, you're in great health, but at 68, it's really important to have these things in place. If something happens, God forbid, it's crucial that someone can manage your affairs. Pay your bills, handle your investments, make sure nothing falls through the cracks. I'm 68. In perfect health. I kept my eyes on the document, reading the fine print. I had a full physical 3 months ago. Clean bill of health. Of course you are. Michael jumped in quickly. This isn't about you being sick or declining. It's just... Dad, you know how the law works better than anyone. If you become incapacitated and don't have a power of attorney in place, we have to go through a lengthy, expensive guardianship process. Court hearings, attorneys, evaluations. It's a nightmare. This just saves time and legal fees if something ever happens. Everything he was saying was technically true. This was exactly the kind of document I used to draft for my own clients. But something felt wrong. I looked up from the papers. Met Michael's eyes. I need to review these with my own attorney before signing anything. Michael's jaw tightened. Just for a second. Then he smoothed it over with a smile. Dad, we're trying to be responsible here. Clean up loose ends. Get everything properly documented. This is what adults do. And I'm being a responsible adult by not signing legal documents without proper review. Vanessa's smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. Of course. Of course. Take all the time you need, Richard. But her voice had cooled. Noticeably. They left shortly after that. The cookies sat untouched on my coffee table. Before they got in their car, I watched through the window as Vanessa said something to Michael. Sharp. Angry. He shook his head, hands spread in a helpless gesture. She got in the passenger seat and slammed the door. I took photos of every page of those documents with my phone. Every clause. Every signature line. Every piece of fine print. Then I called Susan Chen. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Saturday, but Susan answered anyway. I sent her the photos while we were still on the phone. Heard her going silent as she reviewed them. The kind of silence that meant a lawyer was seeing something very wrong. Richard. Her voice had gone flat. Professional. The power of attorney is the red flag. Combined with them asking to move into your house last month? They're building a pathway. To what? To claiming you're declining. To taking control of your finances. To potentially pursuing conservatorship. The word hung in the air between us like poison. But I'm not declining. Doesn't matter. Susan's voice was grim. Perception is reality in these cases. If you'd let them move in, and then they had control of your finances through this POA, and then they started telling doctors you were confused or forgetful or making poor decisions, it becomes a credible narrative. Especially if you're isolated in your own home with them as your primary caregivers. My hands were shaking. I set down my coffee cup carefully so I wouldn't spill it. What do? You protect yourself. Immediately. Susan's voice shifted into command mode. I'm sending you the name of an attorney who specializes in elder financial abuse prevention. Yes, I'm calling it that because that's the legal category this falls under. And Richard? 3 things. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And whatever you do, don't let them know you're onto them yet. Why not? Because right now they think you're considering it. They think they're making progress. If you confront them, they'll know their plan is exposed and they might escalate faster. You need time to build your defenses first. After we hung up, I sat on my couch surrounded by those documents. Stared at them spread across my coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. This was my son. The boy I'd raised to value honesty. To work hard. To treat people with respect. How had we gotten here? I spent the next week in what I can only describe as surveillance mode. Not of Michael, I didn't follow him or hire a private investigator or anything dramatic like that. But I started paying attention. Really paying attention. To patterns I'd been too trusting to see before. On June 14th, I was at the community center for my weekly chess game with Martin, a retired engineer I'd been playing against for 3 years. My phone was sitting on the table between us, face up. A text came through from Michael. Hey Dad, just checking in. How are you feeling today? Any dizzy spells or confusion? Want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Martin glanced at it. Raised an eyebrow. You sick? No. Perfectly healthy. Huh. Weird question then. It was weird. I'd never had dizzy spells. Never been confused. Why was Michael asking about symptoms I didn't have? Unless he was building a record. Creating a paper trail of concerns about my health. I looked back through our text history. There it was. June 9th, Dad, you sounded tired on the phone yesterday. Are you sleeping okay? Maybe you should talk to your doctor about sleep aids. I hadn't sounded tired. I'd sounded normal. June 11th, Mom mentioned you forgot her birthday last year. I know grief affects memory. Have you talked to Dr. Patel about that? I hadn't forgotten Jennifer's birthday. It wasn't even her birthday month. And Jennifer was dead. Who was Mom in this text? His mother-in-law? Why would she be discussing me? June 13th, saw you at the grocery store yesterday but you didn't see me wave. Your eyesight okay? When's your last vision check? I hadn't been at the grocery store on June 13th. I'd been home all day doing yard work. Each text, by itself, seemed like normal concern from a caring son. But together they read like someone documenting decline. Building evidence of a competency problem that didn't exist. On June 15th, at 10 a.m., I met with Donald Crane. His office was in downtown LA, 23rd floor. Small but expensively appointed. Dark wood furniture. Real leather chairs. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Grand Avenue. Donald was maybe 55. Graying hair cut military short. Sharp eyes behind wireframe glasses. Former prosecutor who'd specialized in elder abuse cases before transitioning to prevention and estate protection. Susan's highest recommendation. I showed him everything. The text messages. The complete loan history. The documents Michael had brought with the power of attorney hidden inside like a trap. Donald read in silence for 15 minutes. Occasionally made notes on a yellow legal pad in handwriting so neat it looked printed. When he finished, he set down his pen very deliberately. Looked at me over his glasses. "Mr. Foster, I need to ask you something directly." His voice was measured. Professional. "Do you believe your son intends to harm you?" I thought about Michael as a child. 6 years old, crying because he'd accidentally broken Jennifer's favorite vase. The blue one her grandmother had given her. Devastated, not because he'd be punished, but because he'd hurt something his mother loved. 16 years old, calling me from a friend's house at 2 a.m. because he'd had too much to drink at a party and needed a ride home. Scared. Ashamed. But he'd called me anyway because he trusted I'd come get him without judgment. 22 years old, law school, calling at midnight overwhelmed by the workload, terrified he wasn't smart enough, asking if it was okay to quit. And I'd talked him through it. Told him everyone felt that way first year. That he could do it. "I don't think he intends to harm me," I said slowly, choosing each word carefully. "I think he's desperate. I think he's being influenced by his wife. And I think desperation makes people capable of things they'd never normally consider." Donald nodded. Wrote something on his legal pad. "That's a measured assessment. Here's mine. Whether the intent is malicious or simply opportunistic, the outcome is the same. They're positioning themselves to control your assets. The question isn't their motivation. The question is whether you're willing to stop them." "How?" Donald pulled out a fresh legal pad. Started writing as he talked. "First, don't sign anything. You've already done that, good. Second, document everything. Every interaction, every request, every conversation. Timestamps, screenshots, written summaries. Build a paper trail showing you're completely competent. Third, we need to create an ironclad estate plan that removes all ambiguity about your assets and their distribution. I already have a will. A will can be contested." Donald's voice was matter-of-fact. "Easily, if someone argues you were under duress or experiencing declining mental capacity when you signed it. What you need is a comprehensive protection plan, revocable living trust, healthcare directive, financial power of attorney assigned to someone other than Michael, possibly a no-contest clause that disinherits anyone who challenges the estate." "That seems extreme." Donald set down his pen. Folded his hands on his desk. Looked at me with an expression that was part pity, part respect. "Mr. Foster, I've been doing elder law for 23 years. I've seen elderly parents who thought their children would never betray them end up trapped in legal guardianships, every aspect of their lives controlled by the adult children who claim to be helping. I've seen competent adults declared incompetent because their kids wanted control of the bank accounts. I've seen families completely destroyed over money." He paused. "Let that sink in. It's not extreme. It's prudent. And if you don't do it now, while you have the power and capacity to make your own choices, you might not get another chance." I sat back in the expensive leather chair. Stared at the ceiling tiles. If I do this, Michael will know. It will destroy what's left of our relationship. "Mr. Foster." Donald's voice was gentle but firm. "I say this with compassion. What relationship are you protecting? The one where he borrows money without repaying it? The one where he brings you legal documents designed to give him control over your finances? The one where he texts you documenting non-existent health problems? Or the one where he tries to manipulate your love for your grandchildren to get what he wants?" The words landed like physical blows. Because they were true. All of them. I closed my eyes. Saw Michael at 8 years old, begging to stay up late to watch the stars through the telescope Jennifer had bought him for his birthday. Saw Michael at 18, heading off to college, hugging me tight in the driveway and promising to make me proud. Saw Michael last Saturday, sliding that power of attorney document across my coffee table with practiced reasonable explanations. Do it, I said. All of it. Donald nodded. Didn't smile. Didn't congratulate me. Just nodded and started making notes. One more thing. He looked up. I need you to understand, once you do this, there's no going back. Your son will almost certainly find out eventually. And when he does, the reaction will not be pleasant. Are you prepared for that? What does that mean? It means he might cut you off from your grandchildren completely. Say terrible things about you to family and friends. Tell people you're senile or paranoid or being manipulated. Possibly never speak to you again. Financial protection often comes at a severe personal cost. Emma's face flashed through my mind. 5 years old. Bright smile. Called me Papa in that sweet voice that melted my heart every time. Loved when I made her pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse on Sunday mornings. Could I lose her? Could I live with that? I don't know if I'm prepared for that cost, I admitted. But I know it's necessary. Donald picked up his pen again. Then let's get started. Over the next 6 weeks, Donald craned and I constructed what he called a financial fortress. The trust. A revocable living trust with me as trustee while I lived. Upon my death, assets would transfer to a charitable foundation established in Jennifer's name, supporting elder financial abuse awareness and legal aid services. There was a $50,000 bequest to Michael, and $250,000 set aside in an educational trust for Emma and James, accessible only when they turned 25. Not nothing. But not the $3.8 million Michael was expecting. The power of attorney. Financial power of attorney granted to Susan Chin. Healthcare power of attorney granted to my cousin Margaret in Arizona, a retired nurse, sharp as they come, with zero connection to Michael or Vanessa. Not my son. The healthcare directive. A clearly worded advanced healthcare directive specifying my end-of-life wishes, with explicit language stating I was of sound mind, under no duress, and making these decisions freely after careful consideration and consultation with legal counsel. The no contest clause. Crystal clear language, anyone who challenged the trust or claimed undue influence would forfeit their bequest entirely. Fight me in court, lose everything. The documentation. I began keeping a daily journal. What I ate for breakfast. What books I read. Conversations I had. Chess games I played and whether I won. Cognitive exercises, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, articles I wrote for the community center newsletter. Timestamps on everything. Building a comprehensive paper trail of competency. I also went to Dr. Patel and requested a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. She looked at me with concern. Richard, is something wrong? You seem perfectly healthy to me. I need documentation. For legal reasons. She studied my face for a long moment. Then nodded. I'll refer you to a neuropsychologist. Dr. Helen Rodriguez. She's excellent. The evaluation took 2 hours. Memory tests. Problem-solving tasks. Verbal fluency exercises. Pattern recognition. Executive function assessments. Dr. Rodriguez was thorough. Professional. Kind. Mr. Foster, she said at the end, reviewing her notes, you scored a 29 out of 30 on the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. That's well above the threshold for concern. Your memory function is intact. Executive function is excellent. Judgment is appropriate and well-reasoned. I see absolutely no signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or any psychiatric condition that would affect your capacity to make decisions. Can you put that in writing? Of course. 3 days later, I had an official report. Patient demonstrates full cognitive capacity and is completely capable of managing his own affairs independently. I added it to my growing file of evidence. During all of this, all 6 weeks of legal maneuvering and documentation, Michael continued texting me. June 22nd, 3:47 p.m. Hey Dad, have you had a chance to review those documents we left with you? June 22nd, 4:15 p.m. Still looking at them. Want to make sure I understand everything completely. June 29th, 11:23 a.m. Dad, we really need to finalize this soon. Our financial advisor says it's important to close these loose ends out before the fiscal year ends for tax purposes. June 29th, 11:58 a.m. I'll let you know soon. July 8th, 9:34 p.m. Dad? You're being weird about this. It's just standard paperwork. Every responsible adult should have these documents in place. I didn't respond to that one. On July 12th, at 2:17 p.m., Donald called me. Everything's ready. The trust is fully executed. Your directives are in place and filed with the county recorder. Copies are with your designated power of attorney holders. You're protected. Thank you. But Richard, there's one more thing. His voice was serious. One additional step I strongly recommend you take. What's that? I heard him take a breath. Sell the house. I almost laughed. Sell it? Why on earth would I? Because it's your largest single asset and the one your son has already tried to access. As long as you own it, as long as you're living there alone, it remains a vulnerability. Sell it. Move into a senior living community. Put the proceeds into your trust where they're protected. Remove the temptation entirely. That's extreme, Donald. No, Mr. Foster. His voice was firm. What's extreme is waiting around to see how desperate your son gets. And I promise you, based on the pattern I'm seeing, based on 23 years of cases exactly like this, he will get more desperate. And desperate people escalate. After we hung up, I walked through my house. 34 years of memories. The kitchen where Jennifer made Thanksgiving turkey every year. Always slightly dry, but we pretended it was perfect and smothered it in gravy. The living room where we'd hosted Michael's high school graduation party. 50 people crammed in. Jennifer laughing, radiant in her yellow dress. The backyard where we'd planted the oak tree when Michael was 10. Watching it grow year by year until its branches were thick enough to hold the tire swing, though Michael had been too old by then. I didn't want to leave. But Donald was right. As long as the house existed, as long as I lived here alone, I was vulnerable. Michael had already researched adverse possession. I'd seen it myself, hadn't I? That day in June when he'd left his laptop on my kitchen counter and I'd glanced at the screen while he was in the bathroom. Browser tabs open, Adverse Possession California. Establishing residency through caretaking. Property rights of adult children. He'd been planning this. Researching it. And if I stayed here, he'd keep trying. On July 15th, at 9:30 a.m., I called a realtor. Patricia Munoz. Highly recommended. Specialized in Pasadena properties. She came by that afternoon to assess the house. Beautiful property, she said, walking through the rooms, taking notes. Excellent bones. Great location. Mature landscaping. I'd listed at $1.795 million. In this market, you will probably have offers within 2 weeks. Do it. Are you sure? This is a big decision. You've lived here a long time. I'm sure. The sign went up on July 17th. A white post with blue letters, for sale. Standing in my front yard like a declaration of war. Michael called me the next day. July 18th, 4:42 p.m. His voice was tight when I answered. Dad, I drove by the house today. There's a for sale sign in the yard. Yes. Silence. Heavy and cold. What the hell, Dad? You're selling? I'm downsizing. I've been thinking about it for a while. You didn't mention it. His voice was rising now. Sharp. You didn't say a word about this. I wasn't aware I needed your permission to sell my own property. More silence. I could hear Vanessa's voice in the background. Urgent. Angry. Demanding. Where are you moving? I'm looking at a senior living community. The Waterford in Pasadena. Very nice place. Independent living, social activities, meals included, maintenance handled, emergency medical response available 24/7. Those places are expensive as hell. I can afford it. Dad. Michael's voice had shifted, trying to sound reasonable now. Concerned. This is a major life decision. You shouldn't make it alone. You should talk to family first. Let us help you think it through. Michael, I'm 68 years old. I've been making major decisions for half a century. I practiced law for 40 years. I think I'm capable of deciding where I want to live without a committee. But the inheritance. And there it was. The word hummed between us like a confession. The inheritance, I said slowly, deliberately, is mine to manage as I see fit. While I'm alive, these are my assets. My money. My house. My decisions. When I die, you'll receive whatever I've designated in my estate plan. Which, incidentally, I've recently updated with an attorney. Updated? His voice went sharp. What does that mean? It means I've worked with legal counsel to ensure my affairs are properly organized and my wishes will be executed exactly as I intend. Dad, if you're making decisions about your estate, I should be involved in those conversations. I'm a lawyer. I can help you. Make sure everything's structured correctly. I have my own attorney. But thank you. Who? That's private. Another long, frozen silence. Then Michael's voice came back, and it was different now. Worried. Or performing worry, I couldn't tell anymore. Dad, are you okay? Like, mentally? You're acting paranoid. Making these huge decisions suddenly without talking to anyone. Selling the family home. Being secretive about your legal affairs. This isn't like you. And there it was. The opening move I'd been expecting. The first direct suggestion that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't thinking clearly. That maybe I needed someone to make decisions for me. I'm perfectly fine mentally. In fact, I had a comprehensive cognitive assessment done last month by a neuropsychologist. Dr. Helen Rodriguez. She said I'm sharp as ever. Would you like a copy of the report? Dead silence on the other end. Then Vanessa's voice in the background, louder now. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakable. Angry. Frustrated. That won't be necessary, Michael said finally. But Dad, I really think we should sit down. The three of us. You, me, and Vanessa. Talk through whatever's going on here. There's nothing going on. I'm selling my house and moving into a retirement community. Millions of people my age do exactly the same thing every year. But, Michael, I need to go. My realtor is calling with an update. That was a lie. But I needed to end this conversation before I said something I couldn't take back. Dad, wait. I hung up. Stood in my kitchen, holding my phone, hand trembling slightly. But I'd held the line. Hadn't given him anything. Hadn't shown my hand. The house sold in 12 days. A young couple. Both worked in tech. Cash offer. $1,820,000. Minimal contingencies. They loved the oak tree. Told me they had a 3-year-old daughter who'd love to play under it. That part hurt more than I expected. Closing date, August 30th. I started packing. 34 years of life compressed into cardboard boxes. Every item a memory. Every room a chapter ending. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a clock was ticking. 46 days until closing. 46 days until Michael discovered I'd actually done it. 46 days to prepare for whatever came next. Because something was coming. I could feel it. The way you feel a storm building on the horizon, still distant but inevitable. Michael wasn't going to let this go. The only question was, what would he do next? On August 3rd, Michael and Vanessa showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the garage, packing books into boxes, Jennifer's gardening guides, my law reference books I couldn't quite bring myself to throw away, when I heard a car pull up in the driveway. I looked through the garage door opening and saw them getting out. No kids. Again. Michael's face was set. Hard. The way it used to look when he was a teenager and we were about to have a fight about curfew or grades or something he desperately wanted permission for. I walked to the front door to meet them. Michael. Vanessa. Michael didn't waste time on pleasantries. His voice was tight. We need to talk. I'm busy packing. Dad. Please. Vanessa's voice was soft. Pleading. She dressed carefully for this, nice blouse, professional slacks, her hair and makeup done. Like this was a performance. We're worried about you. Against every instinct telling me not to, I let them in. The living room was full of boxes now. Furniture pushed to the corners. The house already looked wounded. Empty. We sat with them on the couch, me in Jennifer's chair. That familiar distance between us now felt like a canyon. Michael leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. His lawyer posture. The one he used in depositions. Dad, what's going on? Selling the house without telling us. Being secretive about your finances. Cutting us out of major life decisions. This isn't like you. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think. His voice sharpened. Don't do that. Don't be cryptic. We're your family. Talk to us. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. When had he become someone I needed to protect myself from? The words came out before I could stop them. I found the research on adverse possession. Michael's face went completely white. Actually white. Like someone had drained every drop of blood from his head. What? Your laptop. June 10th. You left it on my kitchen counter while you used the bathroom. The screen was open. I saw it. My voice was steady. Calm. 40 years of courtroom experience keeping me level. Adverse possession in California. Establishing residency through caretaking. Property rights through continuous occupation. Vanessa's eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly. Michael's hands had started trembling. His voice came out shaky. Dad, that wasn't, I was just exploring legal options. Options to steal my house. That's not, his voice was rising now, defensive. You're twisting this into something it's not. I kept my tone measured. Matter of fact. Yes, it is. Move in under the pretense of financial hardship. Establish legal residency. Act as my caregiver. Build a case that you've been supporting the property financially. And eventually, after enough time, claim ownership interest. I paused, let that sink in. Or better yet, argue I'm declining mentally and need a guardian to manage my affairs. Another pause. Longer this time. Am I wrong? Silence. The kind of silence that confirms everything. Vanessa recovered first. She always was the faster thinker. Her voice took on that smooth, reasonable tone, the one lawyers use when they're repositioning. Richard, you are completely misunderstanding Michael's intentions. He was researching whether we'd have any legal protections if we moved in and contributed financially to the household. It was about protecting ourselves and making sure we understood the arrangement, not about taking advantage of you. Really? I kept my voice calm. Then explain the power of attorney documents. Explain why you brought those to me hidden inside gift paperwork. Explain the timing. Those were standard. I've drafted thousands of estate planning documents in my career, Vanessa. I know what standard looks like. And I know what manipulation looks like. Michael stood abruptly. His chair scraped loud against the hardwood floor. I can't believe this. His face had flushed red now, his voice shaking with anger. I can't believe what I'm hearing. You're accusing me of trying to steal from you? Your own son? I'm stating facts. My voice stayed level. You researched adverse possession before asking to move in. You brought me power of attorney documents disguised as routine paperwork. You've been texting me for weeks documenting health problems I don't have. Building a record of decline that doesn't exist. Those texts were concern. Michael's voice cracked. Actual concern from someone who loves you. Were they? Or were they evidence building for an eventual competency challenge? Vanessa stood too now. Her face had hardened. The soft, pleading expression was completely gone. Richard, I think we should all take a breath here. Emotions are clearly running high, Anne. Get out. They both froze. Michael's voice dropped low. Dangerous. I'm sorry. Get out of my house. Now. Dad. This conversation is over. My voice was steady. Final. The house is sold. My estate is planned with my own attorney. You will receive what I've designated in my trust and not a penny more. And if you attempt to challenge it, there's a no contest clause that will disinherit you entirely. Those are the facts. Now leave. Michael's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Shock. Anger. Something that might have been genuine hurt. Then his jaw set. Hard. You'll regret this, he said, his voice trembling. When you're alone in that facility. When you need help and there's no one there. When you're dying and you realize you chose money over family. You'll regret this. Maybe. But it's my choice to make. Vanessa was already heading for the door. Michael followed. At the threshold, he turned back one last time. I hope it was worth it, Dad. Then they were gone. I stood in my half-packed living room, surrounded by boxes, and listened to their car drive away. My hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. I'd just severed my relationship with my only child. There was no going back from this. But here's what I didn't expect. What happened next changed everything. I moved into the Waterford on September 8, 2023. Unit 3C. 7th floor. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, small kitchen, balcony overlooking the community courtyard with its koi pond and Japanese gardens. 1,200 square feet. About a third the size of my house. It was perfect. The staff helped me move in, there was a service for that, included in the monthly fee. They unpacked my kitchen boxes, helped me arrange furniture, showed me where everything was. Where the dining hall was. Where the mailboxes were. How to reserve the guest suite if I ever had visitors. Which seemed unlikely now. My new neighbors introduced themselves. Dorothy and 3B knocked on my door that first evening with a plate of cookies and a knowing smile. 72 years old, retired librarian with sharp eyes and a dry wit that reminded me of Susan. "Welcome to the 7th floor," she'd said. "We're the troublemakers up here. Hope you can keep up." She invited me to Thursday afternoon book club. Margaret and 2A stopped by the next morning, 68, former nurse, organized and cheerful in that competent way nurses have. She recruited me for the community garden committee. "We need someone who actually knows which end of a plant goes in the dirt," she joked. Donald, not my attorney, different Donald, and 4A introduced himself in the elevator. 69, retired engineer who loved chess. We started playing every Tuesday evening. The dining hall served 3 meals a day. The food was surprisingly good, better than I could cook for myself, honestly. Real plates. Cloth napkins. A menu that changed daily. There were activities. Movie nights in the theater room. Guest lectures. Exercise classes. Bus trips to museums and theaters and the coast. I started attending things. Meeting people. Building a life. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night. No worrying about Michael showing up unannounced. No anxiety about what he might try next. No fear that I'd wake up to find he'd somehow gotten access to my accounts or filed legal paperwork without my knowledge. I was safe. Physically secure. Legally protected. Surrounded by people who had no financial interest in my assets. It felt like I could finally breathe again. Michael didn't call. 2 weeks went by. Then 3. I thought maybe that was it. Maybe he'd accepted it. Maybe we'd just never speak again. I was wrong. In mid-September, Susan Chin called me. Her voice was serious. "Richard, I need to give you a heads up. Michael contacted me." My stomach dropped. "Why?" "He called my office number. I don't know how he got it, probably from when we all practiced together years ago." She paused. "Asked if we could talk about your situation. Said he was concerned about your mental state. That you were making impulsive decisions, cutting off family, acting paranoid. He wanted to know if I thought you were being influenced or needed support." "What did you tell him?" Her voice was firm. "I told him I couldn't and wouldn't discuss another client's personal affairs. That you were fully competent and had every legal right to make your own decisions. Then I told him not to contact me again." "How did he react?" "He asked point blank if I was your power of attorney for financial matters." Susan's tone darkened. I confirmed I was. "He said that was problematic and suggested I might have undue influence over you. Then he said he might need to consult with an attorney about the situation." My blood ran cold. "He's going to challenge it. He's considering it. Testing the waters. Looking for weaknesses." Susan's voice was grim now. "Richard, you need to be prepared for the possibility that he'll escalate this. Adult Protective Services report claiming you're being exploited. Petitions for wellness checks. Possibly even a formal guardianship petition. But I'm not being exploited. I'm living independently. Making my own choices. I know that. You know that. But APS has to investigate every complaint. And an investigation creates a record. Creates doubt." She paused. "Which is exactly what Michael needs if he wants to pursue conservatorship. What do I do? Keep living your life. Document everything. Stay social. Stay visible. Make it crystal clear to anyone watching that you're independent, competent, happy, and thriving." So that's what I did. I joined Dorothy's book club. Started really committing to the community garden. I'd forgotten how much I loved growing things, how therapeutic it was to have my hands in soil, watching something grow from nothing. I attended every social event. Game nights. Movie screenings. The weekly coffee socials in the lounge. Made friends. Dorothy became my closest confidant. I told her some of what was happening, not everything, but enough. She'd been through her own version with her daughter years ago. Understood the dynamics. They use guilt like a weapon, she'd said one evening over tea in her apartment. Make you feel like protecting yourself is the same as abandoning them. Is it? I'd asked. Abandoning them? Dorothy had looked at me seriously. Richard, your son tried to steal your house. That's not hyperbole. That's what the research was for. You're not abandoning him. You're refusing to be a victim. I knew she was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. Then, on November 15th, the next escalation came. I was in the courtyard reading one of the mysteries Dorothy had recommended, something about inheritance and family secrets, ironically, when Margaret from the front desk came to find me. Her face was worried. Richard, there are police officers here. They're asking to speak with you. My heart started hammering. Police? They said it's a wellness check. Someone called in a concern about your welfare. I knew immediately who'd called. I followed Margaret back to the lobby, forcing myself to stay calm. To breathe. Two uniformed officers stood near the front desk. Young, one probably early 30s, one maybe 25. Professional. Polite. The older one spoke first. Mr. Foster? I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Lee. We received a wellness check request from your son. He expressed concerns about your welfare, said you've been making unusual decisions and he hasn't been able to reach you to verify you're okay. I took a slow breath. This was expected. Donald Crane had warned me this might happen. Officers, I appreciate the concern, but I'm perfectly fine. My voice was steady. I moved into this community by choice in September. I'm in good health. I'm here voluntarily. And I've chosen to limit contact with my son due to personal family disagreements. Officer Lee pulled out a small notepad. Can we ask what kind of disagreements, sir? Financial ones. My son borrowed significant money from me over several years without repayment. He disagreed with my decision to sell my house and move here. He wanted access to my primary assets, and I declined to provide that access. Officer Martinez nodded slowly, his expression neutral but understanding. Are you here voluntarily, sir? Completely. I pay $4,800 monthly rent out of my own funds. I can leave anytime I want. I'm simply choosing to live here because it meets my needs. Do you feel pressured or controlled by anyone? Officer Lee was still writing. Staff? Family? Friends? No. I make all my own decisions. I have independent legal representation. I have financial power of attorney assigned to a trusted colleague. I'm cognitively sound. I can provide medical documentation if necessary. Officer Martinez nodded slowly. He'd probably seen this before, adult children calling in wellness checks on parents who were perfectly fine but had set boundaries the children didn't like. That won't be necessary, Mr. Foster. We just needed to verify you're safe and here by choice. Everything appears to be in order. Officer Lee looked up from his notepad. Do you need us to note anything specific in the report, sir? Yes. Please note that I'm declining contact with my son by my own choice, not due to undue influence from anyone. And that future wellness checks are unnecessary unless I personally request them. Understood, sir. Take care. After they left, I went back to my apartment and called Donald Crane. My voice was shaking, with anger now, not fear. He called for a wellness check. Donald's response was immediate. Damn it. Okay. His voice shifted into business mode. Here's what we do. I'm drafting a letter to Michael from my office today, formally notifying him that any further attempts to interfere with your living situation or to claim you're incapacitated will be considered harassment and potentially grounds for a restraining order. Will that stop him? It'll slow him down. And it creates a legal record that you're proactively protecting yourself, that you're aware of his tactics and responding appropriately. He paused. Which matters if this ever ends up in court. There was a moment of silence. Then I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Do you really think it'll go to court? Donald was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. I think your son is desperate. I think he's being encouraged by his wife. I think he believes he has a legitimate claim to your assets. And I think desperate people with perceived grievances push until something stops them. So yes. You think it'll go to court. I think you should prepare for that possibility. Thanksgiving was approaching. Every year since Jennifer died, I'd hosted. Michael, Vanessa, the kids. Turkey and stuffing and football on TV and board games with Emma, who was just learning how to play but loved the attention and the laughter. This year, there was no invitation. On November 20th, Vanessa called me. Not Michael. Vanessa. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me. Richard, hi. It's Vanessa. Her voice was warm. Friendly. Like nothing had happened. I know. Listen, I understand things have been tense between you and Michael. But Emma keeps asking about you. She misses Papa. And it's Thanksgiving. Family should be together for Thanksgiving. I'm not hosting this year. I know. We'd like to host this year. At our place. Have you come over for dinner? Her voice softened. Emma would be so happy. Every instinct I had was screaming this was a trap. I don't think that's a good idea. Richard, please. Her voice shifted. Lower. More vulnerable. Whatever's happening between you and Michael, Emma shouldn't suffer for it. She's 5 years old. She doesn't understand why her grandfather just disappeared from her life. The words hit exactly where she'd aimed them. Right in the heart. I haven't disappeared. Your husband called the police to do a wellness check on me. Silence. Long and heavy. When she spoke again, her voice was careful. Richard, that was a misunderstanding. Michael was genuinely worried. You'd cut off contact so abruptly. I set boundaries. There's a difference. Her tone changed. More reasonable. More persuasive. From his perspective, his father suddenly sold the family home, moved into a facility, stopped returning his calls, and started acting secretive about his finances. Can you understand why that would worry him? She was good. I had to give her that. Reframing everything to make Michael look like the concerned son and me look like the unstable parent. Vanessa, I'm not discussing this with you. I'm not asking you to. Her voice was gentle now. Almost pleading. I'm just asking you to come to Thanksgiving dinner. To see your granddaughter. You don't have to stay long. Just dinner. For Emma. I thought about Emma. Her bright smile. The way she'd run to me shouting Papa. The sound of her laughter when I pushed her on the swing in Jennifer's backyard. I'll think about it. Thank you. Really. That's all I'm asking. Just think about it. After we hung up, I sat on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Dorothy knocked on my door around 7 p.m. with leftovers from the dining hall and that look that meant she wanted to discuss something. You look troubled, she said, setting down a plate of surprisingly good lasagna. Vanessa called. Invited me to Thanksgiving. And I don't know if it's genuine or if it's another manipulation. Dorothy sat down across from me, poured us both wine from a bottle she'd brought. Richard, do you want to see Emma? Of course I do. Then see Emma. On your terms. She took a sip of wine. Take her to lunch somewhere neutral. Go to a park. See her on ground where you control the situation. Don't walk into their house, their territory, where they control everything. They won't allow that. Dorothy set down her glass. Her voice was firm. Then they don't really want Emma to see you. They want you in their space, under their influence, so they can work on you. That's manipulation disguised as reconciliation. I knew she was right. But God, it was hard. What would you do? Dorothy took another sip of wine. Set down her glass carefully, like she was choosing her words. My daughter tried something similar 12 years ago. Different specifics, but same pattern. Used my grandkids as leverage. If you really loved them, you'd help us. If you really cared, you'd co-sign this loan. What kind of grandmother are you? What did you do? I wrote her a letter. Dorothy's smile was sad. Said I loved her and I loved my grandchildren, but I wouldn't be manipulated. That when she was ready to have a relationship built on mutual respect instead of financial extraction, I'd be here. And I stuck to that boundary. How long did it take? 3 years. Her voice was quiet. 3 years of missed birthdays and Christmases. 3 years of my grandkids growing up without me there. But eventually she hit rock bottom financially, got real help, rebuilt her life on honest foundations. And when she finally reached out, it was genuine. Not because she wanted something, but because she actually wanted me in her life. Did you forgive her? I'm still working on that part. Dorothy's eyes were honest. But we have a relationship now. Not perfect. But real. I sat with that for a long moment. Processing. I'm 68 years old, Dorothy. What if I don't have 3 years? What if I die before Michael figures it out? Dorothy looked at me with those sharp librarian eyes. Then you die with your dignity intact and your boundaries honored. Which is better than dying broke and betrayed because you kept sacrificing yourself hoping it would change him. She was right. I declined Vanessa's Thanksgiving invitation the next day. But I also called Donald Crane with a proposal. I want to offer supervised visits with Emma. Monthly. Here at the Waterford. With a neutral third party present, a social worker or family counselor. If Michael and Vanessa agree in writing to cease all attempts to access my finances or challenge my competency. Donald was quiet for a moment. That's generous of you, Richard. It's not generous. It's a boundary. My voice was firm. Emma shouldn't suffer because her parents are greedy. But I'm not walking into their house. And I'm not giving them unsupervised access to me where they can later claim I said or did things that support a competency argument. I'll draft the proposal. Donald sent the letter on November 21st. Michael's response came back through his attorney, yes, he'd hired one now, which told me everything about how serious this was getting, on November 27th. The day before Thanksgiving. The letter was 2 pages long. Legal language. Formal tone. But the message was clear. Michael was rejecting my offer. The letter claimed my proposal was unreasonable and controlling. That I was using Emma as a pawn to manipulate him. That supervised visits were insulting and unnecessary and suggested I didn't trust him with his own daughter. The letter went on to state that unless I was willing to engage in family therapy to address my trust issues and control behaviors, and unless I was willing to reconsider my estate planning to treat Michael fairly, there would be no contact of any kind. In other words, give me access to your money, or you'll never see your granddaughter again. I read the letter 3 times. Each time, the words felt more calculated. More cruel. I sat at my small kitchen table, the letter spread out in front of me, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not heartbreak. Not anymore. Anger. I called Dorothy. She picked up on the second ring. Richard? What's wrong? He's using Emma as leverage. There was a pause. Then her voice, soft and sad, I know, honey. I'm sorry. What kind of father does that? My voice cracked. What kind of man weaponizes his own child against his parent? The kind who's been enabled his whole life, Dorothy said quietly. The kind who's never had to face real consequences. The kind who genuinely believes he's entitled to what you have. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing didn't make it hurt less. I spent Thanksgiving alone. Well, not exactly alone. Dorothy invited me to join her and a few other residents for dinner in the community dining hall. They decorated, orange and gold streamers, paper turkeys the grandkids had made, autumn leaves scattered across the tables. Made it festive. There was turkey and all the trimmings and pumpkin pie and people who were kind to each other without ulterior motives. It was the best Thanksgiving I'd had in years. But I still thought about Emma. Wondered if she asked where Papa was. Wondered what they told her. Papa's busy, sweetheart. Papa doesn't want to see us right now. The thought made me sick. December came. The holidays at the Waterford were surprisingly joyful. Decorations everywhere. A big Christmas tree in the lobby that must have been 15 feet tall, covered in lights and handmade ornaments residents had contributed. Carols singing in the evenings. Secret Santa exchanges. I participated. Bought gifts for people I barely knew. Attended parties. Smiled. Made small talk about grandchildren I'd never see again and holidays that felt hollow. But inside, I was bracing myself. Because I knew Michael wasn't done. And on December 18th, I found out I was right. The call came at 8:30 in the morning. I was making coffee, the simple ritual that had become my anchor, when my phone rang. Donald Crane's name on the screen. I picked up. Donald. His voice was tense. Professional. The tone lawyers use when they're about to deliver bad news. Richard, we have a problem. Michael filed a petition for conservatorship. For a moment, I couldn't process the words. The world tilted. What? Donald's voice was clipped. Urgent. He filed yesterday afternoon. I just got the notification this morning. He's claiming you're suffering from cognitive decline, making irrational financial decisions, being exploited by outside parties, meaning me, and that you need a conservator to protect your interests. My throat went dry. But I don't have. I know. We know. Donald's voice steadied, that calm professional tone taking over. But now we have to prove it. In court. With medical evaluations and testimony and evidence. I gripped the edge of the counter. My coffee sat forgotten, steam rising into the morning air. When? Preliminary hearing is scheduled for January 9th. He paused. Let that sink in. We have 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks. 21 days to prove I was competent to manage my own life. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. My legs had gone weak. He's really doing this, I said quietly. Donald's voice came through the phone, steady and focused. He's really doing this. What do we need? His tone shifted into organization mode, methodical, like he was building a case brick by brick. We need medical documentation proving you're cognitively intact. We need financial records showing you're managing your affairs competently. We need witness testimony from people who interact with you regularly who can attest to your independence and decision-making ability. He paused. And we need to be prepared for Michael to paint a very different picture. What kind of picture? Isolated elderly man living in a facility. Estranged from his family. Making impulsive decisions like selling his home. Giving financial control to an outside party. Refusing contact with his son and grandchildren. Donald's voice was grim. They'll argue you're either cognitively impaired or being manipulated. Possibly both. That's not what's happening. I know. His voice was quiet but firm. But we need to prove it. Definitively. In front of a judge. I spent the rest of that day in a daze. Called my doctor. Scheduled a full cognitive evaluation for the following week. Called my financial advisor. Asked for detailed records of every transaction I'd made since Jennifer died. Called Dorothy. Told her what was happening. She came over that evening with dinner, leftover pot roast from the dining hall and a bottle of wine, and that fierce look in her eyes. You're going to fight this, she said. Not a question. A statement. I'm going to fight this. Good. She poured us both wine, the red liquid catching the light from my balcony. And you're going to win. Because you're not alone anymore, Richard. You have us. You have this community. You have people who will stand up in court and tell the truth about who you are. I looked at this woman I'd only known for 3 months. Who'd become one of my closest friends. Who was willing to testify on my behalf against my own son. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me after we win. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Medical evaluations. Cognitive tests. Mini mental state examination. Montreal cognitive assessment. Full neurological workup. Blood tests to rule out any underlying conditions that might affect cognition. I sat in Dr. Sarah Patel's office on December 20th, answering questions, drawing clocks, remembering lists of words, solving puzzles. She was young, maybe 35, but thorough. Precise. The kind of doctor who took notes on everything and didn't rush. Mr. Foster, I want you to remember these 3 words, apple, table, penny. I'll ask you to repeat them in a few minutes. I nodded. Apple, table, penny. We went through the rest of the assessment. Memory tests. Language tests. Executive function tests. Visuospatial abilities. I passed everything. When we finished, Dr. Patel leaned back in her chair and smiled. Mr. Foster, your cognitive function is excellent. Better than excellent, actually. You scored in the 98th percentile for your age group. Relief flooded through me. So there's no evidence of decline? None whatsoever. Your memory is sharp. Your reasoning is sound. Your executive function is intact. She typed something on her computer. I'm writing a detailed letter for your attorney stating that you show no signs of cognitive impairment, dementia, Alzheimer's, or any condition that would affect your decision-making capacity. In my professional opinion, you are fully competent to manage your own affairs. Thank you. She looked at me seriously. Mr. Foster, can I ask you something off the record? Of course. Is this about family members trying to control your finances? I nodded. She sighed. I see it more often than you'd think. Adult children who convince themselves they know better. Who confuse their parents' desire for independence with incompetence. Her voice was gentle but firm. You're doing the right thing. Protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Donald collected financial records. Bank statements going back 2 years. Investment portfolios. Budget spreadsheets I'd maintained meticulously showing every dollar in, every dollar out. Documentation of the house sale. Records of my monthly payments to the Waterford. Proof that I was managing my money responsibly. Better than responsibly, actually. My accounts were in perfect order. My investments were sound. My monthly budget was detailed and balanced. We lined up witnesses. Dorothy agreed to testify first. "I'll tell them exactly who you are," she'd said over coffee one morning. "A sharp, independent man who's building a new life on his own terms." Margaret agreed next. "I've seen you in the garden committee meetings. You're organized. You're engaged. You're not declining, you're thriving." Donald from 4A the Chess Donald offered to testify about our weekly games. "Your strategic thinking is better than mine, Richard. And I was an engineer for 40 years. If you're cognitively impaired, I'd hate to see what competent looks like." My primary care physician, Dr. James Morrison, 71, semi-retired, had been my doctor for 15 years, wrote a letter and agreed to testify if needed. "I've been monitoring your health closely since Jennifer passed. Physically and mentally, you're in excellent shape for your age. This petition is baseless." Susan Chen agreed to testify about my legal and financial decision-making. "Richard, I've worked with you for decades. I've seen you draft estate plans. I've seen you analyze complex legal issues. You're one of the sharpest legal minds I know. This case is an insult." The director of the Waterford, Patricia Hammond, 60, professional, kind, offered to provide documentation of my participation in community activities. "Mr. Foster has been an exemplary resident. He attends activities. He volunteers. He's socially engaged. He's exactly the kind of resident we hope for." Donald prepared me for cross-examination. We sat in his office, the same office where we'd planned my estate, and he fired questions at me like an opposing attorney would. "Mr. Foster, isn't it true you sold your family home without consulting your son?" "I consulted my attorney and my financial advisor. My son has no legal claim to my property." "Isn't it true you moved into a senior living facility at 68 years old, which some might consider premature?" "I moved into an independent living community by choice because it meets my needs. There's no age requirement for independence." "Isn't it true you've cut off contact with your only child and your grandchildren?" "I've set boundaries with an adult son who was attempting to gain unauthorized access to my finances. I've offered supervised visits with my granddaughter, which were refused." "Isn't it true you've given financial control to an outside party who could be exploiting you?" "I've assigned power of attorney to a trusted attorney colleague with whom I've worked for decades. This is a standard estate planning practice. I retain full control of my finances and can revoke that power at any time." Donald nodded approvingly. "Good. Stay calm. Stay factual. Don't let them make you emotional or defensive. The truth is on your side." We practiced for hours. Role-played scenarios. Prepared for every angle Michael's attorney might take. And I tried not to think about the fact that I was about to go to war with my own son. In front of a judge. With my entire future hanging in the balance. January 9th, 2024 arrived. The morning of the preliminary hearing. I woke up at 5 a.m., couldn't fall back asleep. Made coffee. Sat on my balcony watching the sunrise paint the sky pink and gold. Thought about Jennifer. Wished she was here. Wondered what she would think about all this. Would she be proud of me for standing up for myself? Or would she be disappointed that it had come to this? I dressed carefully. Conservative navy suit. Jennifer's favorite tie, the one with thin silver stripes. Polished shoes. Presentable. Professional. Competent. Looked at myself in the mirror. 68 years old. Former attorney. Widower. Father. About to defend my right to control my own life. Dorothy met me in the lobby at 7:30. She dressed up too, nice dress, pearls, her white hair carefully styled. "Ready?" she asked. Ready. Donald Crane picked us up in his Lexus at 8. Margaret and Chess Donald followed in Margaret's car. Susan Chin was meeting us at the courthouse. We drove through morning traffic in silence. I watched the city go by, streets I'd driven for decades, buildings where I'd practiced law, the courthouse where I'd argued hundreds of cases. Now I was the defendant. We arrived at 9. Went through security, the metal detectors, the bag checks, the familiar ritual. Took the elevator to the 4th floor. Probate court. The hallway was already busy. Other cases. Other families. Other legal battles. And then I saw them. Michael and Vanessa. They were standing near the water fountain, talking to a man in an expensive suit. Mid-40s, silver-streaked hair, confident posture. Michael's attorney. Michael looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes. Thinner than I remembered. His suit hung loose on his frame. Vanessa saw me first. Said something to Michael. He looked up. For a moment, we just looked at each other across that hallway. My son. My only child. The person trying to take away my freedom. There was no recognition in his eyes. No warmth. Just cold determination. Then their attorney, I caught his name tag, Bradford Chen, no relation to Susan, said something and they all turned away. Walked into the courtroom. Dorothy touched my arm gently. You okay? I took a breath. I'm okay. Donald checked his watch. It's time. We walked into courtroom 4B together. The room was smaller than I expected. About 30 feet long, wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lights that hummed slightly. Rows of benches for observers. A bailiff's desk. The judge's bench at the front, elevated. Empty for now. Michael and Vanessa sat on the left side with their attorney. We took seats on the right. The distance between us felt like miles. More people filed in. A court reporter. A clerk. 2 people I didn't recognize, witnesses for Michael, I assumed. At exactly 9:30, the bailiff stood. All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Alvarez presiding. We all stood. Judge Alvarez entered through a door behind the bench. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Silver hair pulled back in a bun. Black robe. Serious expression but not unkind. She sat. We sat. Case number PR 2024-00847. In the matter of the conservatorship petition filed by Michael Foster regarding Richard Foster. Her voice was clear and professional. Counsel, please identify yourselves for the record. Bradford Chen stood. Bradford Chen representing petitioner Michael Foster, Your Honor. Donald Crane stood. Donald Crane representing respondent Richard Foster, Your Honor. Judge Alvarez looked at both attorneys, then at me, then at Michael. Let me begin by saying that conservatorship proceedings are serious matters. The court does not take lightly any action that would restrict an individual's autonomy and decision-making capacity. She paused. This preliminary hearing is to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to warrant a full hearing on this petition. Mr. Chen, you may present your case. Bradford Chen stood. Straightened his jacket. Opened a leather folder. Your Honor, thank you. My client, Michael Foster, has filed this petition out of genuine concern for his father's welfare. His voice was smooth. Practiced. The evidence will show that Richard Foster, age 68, has exhibited a pattern of behavior over the past 6 months that suggests diminished capacity and susceptibility to undue influence. I forced myself to stay calm. To breathe. Specifically, Chen continued, Mr. Foster sold his longtime family home without consulting family. He moved into a senior living facility despite being relatively young and healthy. He has cut off contact with his only son and grandchildren. He has assigned financial power of attorney to an outside party. And he has made estate planning changes that disinherit his son without clear justification. Judge Alvarez was taking notes. Her expression was neutral. Your Honor, my client is not motivated by financial gain. He is motivated by love and concern. He simply wants to ensure his father is protected from potential exploitation and that his father's decisions are truly his own. Chen sat down. Judge Alvarez looked at Donald. Mr. Crane? Donald stood. His voice was firm and clear. Your Honor, what the petitioner characterizes as diminished capacity is actually the opposite. It's a competent adult making rational decisions to protect himself from financial exploitation. He paused. Mr. Foster is a retired attorney with over 40 years of practice. He has passed comprehensive cognitive evaluations with flying colors. He is managing his finances responsibly. He is living independently in a community he chose. And he has set appropriate boundaries with family members who were attempting to gain unauthorized access to his assets. I felt a surge of gratitude toward Donald. The evidence will show that Mr. Foster is fully competent, that he is not being exploited, that his decisions are reasonable and well-informed, and that this petition is, quite frankly, retaliatory. Judge Alvarez nodded. Thank you, counsel. Mr. Chen, call your first witness. The petitioner calls Michael Foster to the stand. Michael stood. Walked to the witness stand. Was sworn in. Sat down. I watched my son prepare to testify against me. Bradford Chen approached. Mr. Foster, can you describe your relationship with your father? Michael's voice was steady but emotional. I love my father. He raised me. He was there for me growing up. After my mother, his wife Jennifer, died 2 years ago, I tried to be there for him. To support him through his grief. And how did your father respond to that support? At first, he seemed grateful. But over the past year, he's become increasingly distant. Secretive. He stopped returning my calls regularly. He made major life decisions without telling me. Such as? He sold our family home. The house I grew up in. The house where my mother died. He sold it without even telling me it was on the market. Judge Alvarez looked at me, then back at Michael. When did you learn about the sale? After it was already in escrow. He called me and said, I sold the house. I'm moving into a facility. Just like that. How did that make you feel? Donald stood. Objection. Relevance. Judge Alvarez nodded. Sustained. Mr. Chen, let's focus on facts rather than feelings. Of course, Your Honor. Chen turned back to Michael. Mr. Foster, did you have concerns about your father's decision to move into a senior living facility? Yes. He's only 68. He's relatively healthy. It seemed premature. Impulsive. Did you express these concerns to him? I tried. But he became defensive. Accused me of trying to control him. Said I had no right to question his decisions. Did you notice any other changes in his behavior? Michael hesitated. Then, he started talking about money differently. Became paranoid about his finances. Accused me of trying to steal from him, which is absurd. I'm his son. My hands clenched in my lap. Dorothy, sitting next to me, quietly reached over and squeezed my hand. Did your father give any specific reasons for these accusations? He said he saw research on my laptop about adverse possession. But he completely misinterpreted it. I was researching whether we'd have legal protections if we moved in to help care for him. It was about protecting ourselves, not taking advantage of him. Chen nodded sympathetically. And has your father allowed you to maintain contact with him? Michael's voice broke slightly. No. He's cut us off completely. My daughter, his granddaughter Emma, asks about him constantly. She doesn't understand why Papa doesn't visit anymore. It's heartbreaking. Have you tried to maintain contact? Of course. I've called. I've texted. My wife even invited him to Thanksgiving dinner. He refused. Mr. Foster, in your opinion, is your father being influenced by outside parties? Donald stood immediately. Objection. Calls for speculation. I'll rephrase, Chen said smoothly. Mr. Foster, who currently holds power of attorney over your father's finances? A woman named Susan Chen. An attorney he used to work with. I've never even met her. And do you have concerns about this arrangement? Yes. My father gave financial control to someone outside the family. Someone who could easily take advantage of him. And when I expressed concern, he became angry and defensive. Chen paused for effect. Mr. Foster, what are you asking this court to do? Michael looked directly at Judge Alvarez. His voice was earnest. I just want to make sure my father is protected. That he's making decisions in his own best interest. That he's not being manipulated or exploited. If the court determines he's competent and making his own choices, then fine. I'll accept that. But I need to know he's okay. Thank you, Mr. Foster. No further questions. Judge Alvarez looked at Donald. Cross-examination? Donald stood. Approached the witness stand slowly. Mr. Foster, you testified that you love your father. Is that correct? Yes. And you want to protect him? Yes. Even if that means taking away his right to make his own decisions? Michael hesitated. If he's not capable of making good decisions, then yes, someone needs to protect him. I see. Donald paused. Mr. Foster, how much money have you borrowed from your father over the past 10 years? Michael's face went pale. I don't see how that's relevant. Please answer the question. Objection, Bradford Chen called out. Relevance. Judge Alvarez looked at Donald. Mr. Crane, where are you going with this? Your Honor, the petitioner's financial relationship with the respondent is highly relevant to his motivations in filing this petition. She nodded. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Foster. Michael shifted in his seat. I don't have an exact figure. Would you estimate it's more than $100,000? Possibly. And how much of that have you repaid? Silence. Mr. Foster? None of it. Yet. But I intend to. You intend to. Donald's voice was sharp. But you haven't. In fact, you've continued to ask for more money, haven't you? My father offered to help us. Did he offer? Or did you ask? We needed help. He's my father. That's what family does. I see. Donald walked back to our table. Picked up a document. Mr. Foster, do you recognize this? He handed it to Michael. Michael's face went even paler. Where did you get this? Answer the question, please. Do you recognize it? Yes. Can you tell the court what it is? Michael's voice was barely audible. It's search results. From my laptop. Search results about what, specifically? Adverse possession. Adverse possession in California. Establishing residency through caretaking. Property rights through continuous occupation. Donald read from the document. These are legal strategies for claiming ownership of someone else's property, aren't they? It's not what it looks like, asterisk asterisk. It looks like you were researching how to take your father's house. I was researching our legal protections if we moved in. By establishing adverse possession? By becoming his caregiver to build a claim to his property? No. That's not, asterisk asterisk. Donald held up another document. And these are power of attorney documents you brought to your father hidden inside gift paperwork, aren't they? Bradford Chin stood. Objection. Mr. Crane is badgering the witness. Sustained. Judge Alvarez looked at Donald. Tone it down, counselor. Apologies, Your Honor. Donald's voice was calmer but still firm. Mr. Foster, is it true you brought power of attorney documents to your father disguised as routine paperwork? Michael's jaw was tight. They were standard estate planning documents. That would have given you control over his finances? Not control. Just asterisk asterisk. Yes or no, Mr. Foster? Would those documents have given you access to your father's accounts? Yes. And when your father refused to sign them, and when he discovered your research on adverse possession, he set boundaries with you. Is that correct? He overreacted, asterisk asterisk. He protected himself. And you didn't like that. So you filed this petition. That's not true. I filed because I'm worried about him. Donald's voice was quiet but devastating. You're worried he won't give you his money. Objection. Bradford Chin was on his feet. Withdrawn. Donald walked back to our table. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Alvarez looked at Michael. You may step down. Michael stood on shaky legs. Walked back to his seat. Vanessa grabbed his hand. Mr. Chin, your next witness? Bradford Chin stood. The petitioner calls Dr. William Harrison. An older man stood from the observer benches. 70s, gray hair, expensive suit. He was sworn in. Dr. Harrison, can you state your credentials for the court? I'm a board-certified psychiatrist with over 40 years of practice. I specialize in geriatric psychiatry and cognitive disorders. Have you reviewed materials related to Richard Foster? I have. I reviewed the petition, statements from the petitioner, and general information about Mr. Foster's recent behavior patterns. Donald was already on his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Has this witness actually examined Mr. Foster? Dr. Harrison spoke before the judge could respond. No, I have not personally evaluated Mr. Foster. Judge Alvarez looked sharply at Bradford Chin. Mr. Chin, you are presenting expert testimony from someone who hasn't examined the respondent? Your Honor, Dr. Harrison can speak to general patterns of behavior that may indicate diminished capacity. Based on what? Hearsay from the petitioner? Donald's voice was incredulous. Your Honor, this is absurd. How can a psychiatrist provide expert opinion about someone he's never met? Judge Alvarez nodded. I'm inclined to agree. Mr. Chin, unless Dr. Harrison has personally evaluated Mr. Foster, I'm not sure his testimony is relevant to this proceeding. Bradford Chin tried to recover. Your Honor, expert witnesses routinely provide opinions based on case materials. In cases where personal evaluation isn't possible. This isn't one of those cases. She looked at Dr. Harrison. Dr. Harrison, have you been offered the opportunity to evaluate Mr. Foster? No, Your Honor. I was engaged by the petitioner's counsel to review materials and provide general observations. I see. Judge Alvarez didn't look pleased. I'm going to allow Dr. Harrison to provide limited testimony about general patterns, but I'm giving it very little weight given he hasn't examined the respondent. Proceed, Mr. Chin. It was a devastating blow to Michael's case, and everyone in the courtroom knew it. Bradford Chin tried to salvage it. Dr. Harrison, based on your review of the materials, do the behavior patterns described, selling a home, moving to a facility, cutting off family contact, could these indicate cognitive decline? They could. In some cases, early dementia can manifest as personality changes, impulsive decisions, paranoia about family members. Donald stood. Objection. Dr. Harrison just testified he hasn't examined Mr. Foster. He's speculating. Sustained. Chin tried again. Dr. Harrison, in your experience, can elderly individuals be susceptible to undue influence? Certainly. Isolation from family combined with new relationships can create vulnerability to exploitation. Thank you. No further questions. Donald stood for cross-examination. Dr. Harrison, you testified that certain behaviors could indicate cognitive decline. Could those same behaviors also indicate a competent person setting healthy boundaries? Dr. Harrison hesitated. Possibly. So without actually evaluating Mr. Foster, you can't determine whether his behavior indicates decline or independence. That's correct. Thank you. No further questions. Dr. Harrison stepped down. His testimony had been virtually worthless. Judge Alvarez looked at her watch. It's nearly 11. We'll take a 15-minute recess, then hear from the respondent's witnesses. She stood. We all stood. The moment she left the courtroom, I felt my shoulders sag. Dorothy put her hand on my arm. You're doing great. Donald destroyed Michael on cross-examination. It doesn't feel great. I know. Her voice was gentle. But you're winning. Trust the process. We filed out to the hallway. I needed air. Needed space. Michael and Vanessa were at the other end of the hall, talking urgently with Bradford Chen. Michael looked upset. Defeated. I felt no satisfaction in that. Just sadness. This was my son. And we were destroying each other in the courtroom. The 15-minute recess felt like hours. I stood in the courthouse hallway, drinking water from a fountain that tasted metallic. My hands were still shaking from watching Michael testify. From hearing him twist everything into a narrative where I was the problem. Donald stood next to me, reviewing notes. Susan arrived during the break. She'd been in another court appearance that morning. She looked at me with concern. How's it going? Michael testified. Donald tore apart his credibility. I took another sip of water. But it doesn't feel like winning. I know. Her voice was understanding. But you're protecting yourself. That matters. The bailiff called us back in. We filed into the courtroom again. Took our seats. Judge Alvarez returned. Mr. Crane, you may present your witnesses. Donald stood. Your Honor, the respondent calls Dr. Sarah Patel. Dr. Patel walked to the witness stand. Young, professional, confident. She was sworn in and sat. Dr. Patel, can you state your credentials? I'm a neurologist specializing in cognitive disorders and dementia. I completed my residency at Johns Hopkins and have been practicing for 12 years. Have you examined Richard Foster? Yes. I conducted a comprehensive cognitive evaluation on December 20th, 2023. Can you describe that evaluation? Certainly. I administered the mini-mental state examination, the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, memory tests, language assessments, executive function tests, and visual-spatial ability tests. I also reviewed his medical history and conducted a full neurological examination. And what were your findings? Dr. Patel looked directly at Judge Alvarez. Mr. Foster's cognitive function is excellent. He scored in the 98th percentile for his age group. His memory is sharp. His reasoning is sound. His executive function is intact. There are no signs of dementia, Alzheimer's disease, or any cognitive impairment whatsoever. In your professional opinion, is Mr. Foster competent to manage his own affairs? Absolutely. Not only is he competent, his cognitive abilities are above average for his age demographic. Thank you. No further questions. Bradford Chin stood for cross-examination. He looked uncomfortable. This was going to be an uphill battle. Dr. Patel, you conducted this evaluation at the request of Mr. Foster's attorney, correct? That's correct. So you were hired by someone with a vested interest in finding Mr. Foster competent? Dr. Patel's expression didn't change. I was hired to conduct a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. My findings are based on standardized medical tests, not on anyone's preferences. But you're being paid by the defense? I'm being paid for my professional services, yes. The same way Dr. Harrison was paid by you. Her voice was calm but pointed. The difference is that I actually examined the patient. A few people in the courtroom suppressed smiles. Chin tried another angle. Dr. Patel, is it possible for someone to have cognitive decline that doesn't show up on these tests? Early stage decline? Possibly. But Mr. Foster's scores weren't borderline. They were exceptional. And I found no clinical evidence of any neurological issues. Could stress or emotional factors affect test performance? They could. But that would typically lower scores, not raise them. Mr. Foster performed extraordinarily well under what I imagine was a stressful situation. Chin had nothing left. No further questions. The respondent called Susan Chin to the stand. Susan walked to the witness stand. Composed. Professional. She was sworn in. Ms. Chin, what is your relationship to Richard Foster? I'm a colleague. We practiced law together for over 30 years before we both retired. I'm also currently his attorney, in fact, holding financial power of attorney. Can you describe Mr. Foster's mental state and decision-making capacity? Richard is one of the sharpest legal minds I've ever worked with. His analytical abilities, judgment, and decision-making capacity are exceptional. When he asked me to serve as his attorney, in fact, we had extensive discussions about his goals, his concerns, and how to protect his assets. Every decision he made was rational, well-considered, and legally sound. Has Mr. Foster ever seemed confused or impaired in your interactions with him? Never. He's as sharp now as he was when we were practicing together. Ms. Chin, the petitioner has suggested you might be exerting undue influence over Mr. Foster. How do you respond to that? Susan's voice was firm. It's absurd. Richard makes his own decisions. I execute his instructions. That's the nature of a power of attorney. The principal retains control. Richard can revoke my authority at any time. He knows that. This arrangement is entirely at his discretion. Thank you. No further questions. Bradford Chin approached for cross-examination. Ms. Chin, you hold power of attorney over millions of dollars of Mr. Foster's assets, correct? I hold the legal authority to act on his behalf regarding his finances, yes. Isn't it true that gives you significant power over his life? No. It gives me the ability to execute his decisions. There's a difference. But you could theoretically transfer funds, make investments, access accounts. With his authorization. And every action I take is documented and reported to him. He reviews all account statements. He approves all major transactions. Susan's voice was patient but firm. Mr. Chin, I've been a practicing attorney for 40 years. I understand fiduciary duty. I'm not exploiting Richard. I'm protecting him. Protecting him from his own family? Protecting him from financial exploitation. which, given what we've learned today about the petitioner's research into adverse possession and attempted use of power of attorney documents, seems quite necessary. Chen flinched. No further questions. The respondent calls Dorothy Martinez to the stand. Dorothy stood and walked to the witness stand. She caught my eye as she passed and gave me a small, encouraging smile. She was sworn in and sat. Ms. Martinez, what is your relationship to Richard Foster? I'm his neighbor at the Waterford. We live on the same floor. We've become good friends since he moved in last September. Can you describe your observations of Mr. Foster? Dorothy's voice was clear and confident. Richard is sharp, engaged, and independent. He participates actively in community activities. He's on the garden committee. He attends book club. He plays chess with other residents. He's built friendships. He manages his own schedule and his own life. There's absolutely nothing about him that suggests cognitive decline or incompetence. Have you ever observed Mr. Foster seeming confused or impaired? Never. He's one of the most mentally acute people in our community. Ms. Martinez, you've testified that you and Mr. Foster have become friends. Has he discussed his family situation with you? Yes. He's told me about his son's attempts to access his finances. About the research into adverse possession. About being pressured to sign power of attorney documents. Dorothy's voice was steady. Richard didn't cut off his son out of paranoia or confusion. He set boundaries to protect himself from financial exploitation. That's not decline. That's wisdom. Thank you. No further questions. Bradford Chen stood. He looked frustrated. Ms. Martinez, you're Mr. Foster's friend. You want to help him, don't you? I want to tell the truth. Isn't it possible your friendship clouds your judgment? That you see what you want to see? Dorothy's eyes flashed. Mr. Chen, I'm 72 years old. I was a librarian for 45 years. I spent my career evaluating information, sources, and credibility. I know the difference between competence and decline. Richard is competent. But you're not a doctor. No. But I interact with him daily. I see him in unscripted moments. At breakfast. In the garden. Playing games. Having conversations. He's not performing for me. He's living his life. And he's doing it with complete independence and mental clarity. Chen tried one more time. Ms. Martinez, has Mr. Foster told you he misses his granddaughter? Dorothy's expression softened. Yes. So he wants a relationship with his family? He wants a relationship with his granddaughter. What he doesn't want is to be manipulated by his son and daughter-in-law. Dorothy's voice was gentle but firm. There's a difference between loving your family and letting them exploit you. No further questions. The respondent calls Patricia Hammond to the stand. The director of the Waterford walked to the witness stand. Professional. Composed. She was sworn in. Ms. Hammond, can you describe Mr. Foster's participation in community life at the Waterford? Mr. Foster is an exemplary resident. He attends activities regularly. He volunteers on committees. He's socially engaged. He manages his own schedule, his own finances, his own daily living. He requires no assistance with activities of daily living. He's independent in every meaningful way. In your professional experience, does Mr. Foster show any signs of cognitive impairment or need for conservatorship? Absolutely not. If anything, he's one of our most independent and capable residents. Thank you. No further questions. Chen had no cross-examination. There was nothing to challenge. The respondent calls Richard Foster to the stand. My turn. I stood. My legs felt weak, but I forced them to move. Walked to the witness stand. Placed my hand on the Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. I sat. Donald approached. His voice was gentle. Mr. Foster, can you tell the court why you sold your house? I took a breath. Forced my voice to stay steady. My wife Jennifer died in that house 2 years ago. Every room held memories that were becoming painful rather than comforting. The house was too large for one person. It required maintenance I didn't want to manage. I consulted with my attorney and my financial advisor, and we determined that selling the house and moving to a community setting was the best decision for my circumstances. Was this decision impulsive? No. I thought about it for over a year. I researched communities. I visited several facilities. I made a carefully considered choice. Why did you choose the Waterford? Because it offered independence with support. I wanted to maintain my autonomy but have access to services if I needed them in the future. It's a community with activities, social opportunities, and people in similar life stages. It felt right. Mr. Foster, why did you assign power of attorney to Susan Chin instead of your son? This was the hard part. I looked directly at Judge Alvarez. Because I discovered that my son was researching adverse possession, legal strategies to claim ownership of my property. Because he brought me power of attorney documents hidden inside other paperwork, trying to get me to sign them without reading carefully. Because he'd borrowed over $100,000 from me without repayment and was continuing to ask for more. Because I realized that his interest was in my assets, not my welfare. That must have been painful to realize. It was. But ignoring it wouldn't have made it less true. Mr. Foster, the petition claims you've cut off your family. Is that accurate? I've set boundaries. I offered supervised visits with my granddaughter with a neutral third party present. My son refused unless I gave him access to my finances and changed my estate plan. He's the one who chose no contact over accepting my boundaries. Do you love your son? My voice broke slightly. Yes. But love doesn't mean letting someone exploit you. Thank you. No further questions. Bradford Chin stood for cross-examination. His voice was sharp. Mr. Foster, isn't it true you're 68 years old and living in a facility designed for elderly people? I'm living in an independent living community. The average age is 65 to 75. It's not a nursing home. It's not assisted living. It's a residential community. But you chose to move there at 68, which is younger than most residents. I chose to move there because it met my needs. There's no age requirement for wisdom. Mr. Foster, you've given control of your finances to someone outside your family. Doesn't that concern you? I've given power of attorney to a trusted colleague who has no financial interest in my death. Unlike my son, who stands to inherit. Susan Chin has no motive to exploit me. My son does. That's a harsh accusation against your own child. It's a statement of fact. He researched how to take my house. He tried to get me to sign over financial control. He called for a wellness check when I set boundaries. These aren't the actions of someone concerned for my welfare. They're the actions of someone frustrated that I won't give him what he wants. You don't think your son loves you? I paused. Met Chen's eyes. I think my son loves what I can give him. That's not the same thing. The courtroom was silent. Chen tried one more angle. Mr. Foster, wouldn't it be easier to just reconcile with your family? To give your son some role in your financial affairs? To avoid all this conflict? Easier? Yes. Safer? No. My voice was firm now. I spent 40 years practicing law. I know what exploitation looks like. I know what manipulation looks like. And I know the difference between protecting myself and being paranoid. I'm doing the former. No further questions. I stepped down. My legs were shaking. But I'd done it. Judge Alvarez looked at both attorneys. Closing statements? Bradford Chin stood first. Your Honor, my client is simply a concerned son who loves his father. Yes, he made mistakes, researching legal protections, bringing paperwork his father misinterpreted. But his fundamental motive is love and concern. The evidence shows a pattern of behavior, selling a home, moving to a facility, cutting off family, that warrants this court's oversight to ensure Mr. Foster is making decisions in his own best interest. He sat. Donald stood. Your Honor, what the petitioner calls love looks remarkably like financial exploitation. The evidence is clear. Richard Foster is cognitively intact, financially responsible, living independently, and making rational decisions to protect himself from a son who borrowed over $100,000, researched how to claim his property, and attempted to gain unauthorized financial access. This petition isn't about protection. It's about control. And this court should reject it entirely. He sat. Judge Alvarez was quiet for a long moment, reviewing her notes, thinking. Then she looked up. I've heard the testimony. I've reviewed the evidence. And I'm prepared to rule. My heart was hammering. The burden in a conservatorship proceeding is on the petitioner to prove by clear and convincing evidence that the proposed conservatee lacks the capacity to manage their own affairs. That's a high standard. And in this case, that burden has not been met. I felt Dorothy grab my hand. The evidence shows that Mr. Richard Foster is cognitively intact. Dr. Patel's evaluation was thorough and credible. The witness testimony confirms that Mr. Foster is independent, socially engaged, and managing his life competently. His financial records are in order. His living situation is appropriate. Judge Alvarez looked directly at Michael. Mr. Michael Foster's concerns appear to be motivated more by disagreement with his father's decisions than by any actual evidence of incompetence. The evidence about adverse possession research and power of attorney documents is particularly troubling. It suggests the petitioner's true interest may be financial rather than protective. Her voice was firm. I find that Richard Foster has capacity to make his own decisions. The petition for conservatorship is denied. She banged her gavel. This proceeding is concluded. It was over. I'd won. Dorothy hugged me. Donald shook my hand. Susan was smiling. Across the courtroom, Michael sat frozen. Vanessa was whispering urgently to Bradford Chin, who was shaking his head. Judge Alvarez stood. We all stood. She left the courtroom. I walked out into the hallway on shaking legs. Free. Still in control of my own life. But the victory felt hollow. Because my son, my only child, had just tried to take everything from me. And failed. And I didn't know if our relationship could ever recover from that. We stood in the courthouse hallway. Dorothy, Donald, Susan, Margaret, Chess Donald. My people. The ones who'd stood by me. Congratulations, Richard, Donald said. You did it. We did it, I corrected. Down the hall, Michael and Vanessa were leaving. Michael looked back once. Our eyes met. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Anger? Shame? Regret? Then he turned and walked away. And I realized I might never see him again. 2 weeks later. Life returned to normal at the Waterford. Book club on Thursdays. Garden committee on Tuesdays. Chess with Donald on Wednesday evenings. I settled back into my routine. But something had changed. The fear was gone. The anxiety. The constant looking over my shoulder. I'd faced the worst thing I could imagine, my own son trying to take my freedom, and I'd survived. More than survived. I'd won. But the price was high. On January 25th, a letter arrived. Not from Michael. From Vanessa's attorney. A different one this time. Formal. Legal. Stating that Michael and Vanessa were formally requesting no contact. That I was not to attempt to reach out to them or Emma. That any future communication should go through their attorney. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my filing cabinet. They were cutting me off completely. Probably thought it would hurt me. Punish me for winning. But here's what they didn't understand. I'd already grieved this loss. I'd already accepted it. The grandfather who would have broken himself to keep them happy, that man was gone. In his place was someone stronger. Someone who knew his own worth. Someone who understood that love without respect isn't love at all. 3 months later. April 2024. Spring came to the Waterford. The gardens bloomed. The koi pond came alive with activity. The courtyard filled with residents enjoying the sunshine. I spent my days reading, gardening, playing chess, having lunch with Dorothy and Margaret and the others who'd become my chosen family. One afternoon, sitting on my balcony with coffee and a book, I realized something. I was happy. Not the desperate, grasping happiness of someone trying to convince themselves everything was fine. Real happiness. The kind that comes from living authentically. From setting boundaries. From choosing yourself without guilt. I thought about Jennifer sometimes. Wondered what she would think of all this. I like to imagine she'd be proud. Proud that I'd stood up for myself. Proud that I'd built a new life. Proud that I'd chosen dignity over desperation. 6 months later. July 2024. On a hot Tuesday afternoon, I was in the garden pulling weeds when Patricia Hammond, the director, came to find me. "Richard, there's someone here to see you." I looked up, confused. "Who?" "She says she's your daughter-in-law." My stomach dropped. "Vanessa." I stood slowly, brushed dirt from my hands. "Where is she?" "Lobby." "I can tell her you're not available if you'd prefer." I thought about it. Almost said yes. But curiosity won. "No. I'll see her." Vanessa was standing near the front windows, looking out at the courtyard. She'd lost weight. Looked tired. She turned when she heard me approach. "Richard. Thank you for seeing me." I didn't say anything. Just waited. She took a breath. "I know you have no reason to listen to me. But I needed to come. To say something in person. I'm listening. Michael and I are separating. Of all the things I'd expected, that wasn't one of them. I'm sorry." "Don't be." Her smile was sad. "It's been coming for a long time. The court case was just the final straw." "What happened?" "The truth, I suppose." She looked down at her hands. "After we lost the conservatorship petition, Michael became obsessed. Angry. Bitter. Started drinking more. Started blaming everyone, you, his attorney, me. And I finally saw him clearly. Saw what you'd been trying to tell me." She looked up, met my eyes. "He was never trying to protect you. He wanted your money. He convinced himself he was entitled to it. That you owed him. And I went along with it because I wanted to believe him. Because I was scared of our financial situation." "Vanessa. Let me finish. Please." Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm here to say I'm sorry. For supporting Michael. For manipulating you. For using Emma as leverage. That was cruel. And wrong. And I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. I filed for divorce. I'm moving back to my parents' house with Emma. I'm starting over. She paused. And I wanted you to know that when things settle, if you still want a relationship with Emma, I won't stand in the way. My chest tightened. You mean that? I do. She should know her grandfather. The real you. Not the version Michael created in his bitterness. What does Michael think about this? Michael doesn't get a vote. Her voice was firm. He had his chance. He chose money over family. That's his loss. She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is my new address and phone number. No pressure. No timeline. When you're ready, if you're ready, reach out. We'll take it slow. Supervised visits at first, like you originally suggested. Build trust. I took the envelope. Held it. Why are you doing this? Because Emma deserves to know that someone in her family chose integrity over greed. Vanessa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. And because you were right. About everything. And someone should say that to you. She turned to leave, then looked back. You're not alone, Richard. You were never the problem. Please remember that. Then she was gone. I sat in my apartment that evening, the envelope on my coffee table, Dorothy beside me. Are you going to reach out? She asked. I don't know. Maybe. Eventually. You don't have to decide today. I know. We sat in comfortable silence. Dorothy? Thank you. For everything. For standing by me. For testifying. For being my friend when I needed one most. She patted my hand. That's what family does, Richard. Real family. And I realized she was right. Family isn't just blood. It's not just DNA. It's the people who show up. Who stand by you. Who tell you the truth even when it's hard. Dorothy was family. Susan was family. Donald, both of them, were family. Margaret was family. I'd lost a son. But I'd gained a community. And in the end, that trade had saved my life. 1 year later. January 2025. I've been living at the Waterford for 16 months now. I play chess every week. I tend the community garden. I attend book club and movie nights and all the social events. I've started teaching a class on estate planning basics for other residents. Helping them protect themselves the way I protected myself. I've reconnected with Emma. Supervised visits at first, just like I originally proposed. Monthly lunches at a neutral location, a park, a museum, a child-friendly restaurant. Building a relationship slowly. Carefully. She's 6 now. Smart. Curious. Asks a million questions. She doesn't remember much about the court case. Doesn't know that her father tried to take my freedom. Maybe someday I'll tell her. When she's older. When she can understand. But for now, we just spend time together. And that's enough. I haven't spoken to Michael since the court date. I don't know if I ever will. Some relationships can't be repaired. Some betrayals are too deep. And that's okay. I've made peace with it. Last week, I got a letter from the Alzheimer's Association. Apparently, someone nominated me to speak at their annual conference about elder financial abuse and the importance of setting boundaries. I said yes. Because maybe my story can help someone else. Someone facing what I faced. Someone who needs permission to protect themselves from family members who've become predators. This is what I've learned. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. Protecting your assets isn't greedy. It's responsible. Choosing yourself doesn't make you a bad parent. It makes you a smart adult. Family can be chosen, not just inherited. And sometimes, the people who love you most are the ones who haven't known you longest. I'm 69 now. I have enough money to last the rest of my life, managed responsibly. I have friends who care about me for who I am, not what I have. I have a relationship with my granddaughter that's being built on honesty and respect. I have my dignity intact. I have my freedom. And I have peace. Jennifer would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Because I stood up for myself when it mattered most. And I won.